I'm Tim Lyons of the Kansas City Bastards, and I've put on my Sunday best because it's time for another edition of Fuck This Asshole. A lot of things can be said about the Catholic religion and Christianity at large. It has a long history of intolerance, questionable morality, and even mass murder. However, it is important to remember that the religion and its actual principles are two separate things. Whatever your beliefs about Jesus of Nazareth, his unwavering ability to not be a dick, as written in the Bible, makes him a hell of a guy whether his life was fiction or non-fiction. Not being a dick is a good thing. Therefore, it can be said that the transgressions of the church and the religion as a whole are not a reflection of Jesus' teachings, but are rather failures of men who were put into positions of authority and abused their power. The Pope, as leader of the worldwide Catholic Church, has a special kind of power, one that is impervious to oversight or reason. To billions of people in this world, spirituality is sacred. It helps them to shape their moral compass, helps them to navigate complex or overwhelming decisions, and gives them comfort in times of distress when nothing else on this earth can. Whomever holds the position of Pope, therefore, has a very direct and very real influence on the people of his church, not to mention diplomatic immunity as head of the Vatican. Now, we have and will continue to shit on asshole lawyers and politicians, but this is a more complete level of control than any political leader has or will ever have. Now, on to the asshole in question. Pope Benedict XVI was born in Germany as Joseph Ratzinger on April 16, 1927. At the age of 5, he decided he wanted to be a cardinal after seeing the stylish threads of the Cardinal Archbishop of Munich. When he was 14 years old, he was conscripted into the Hitler Youth, a paramilitary organization of future Aryan supermen whose main purpose was to grow SS with the secondary purpose of anti-Semitic indoctrination. In 1943, he was drafted into the German Anti-Aircraft Corps and later trained as German infantry. He deserted the German military in 1945 after his unit ceased to exist and after the Allied front advanced closer to his post. As a Nazi soldier, he was picked up by the Allies and treated as a prisoner of war for the following months until the war ended that same year. One can only speculate whether Ratzinger actively participated in mass killings or just passively observed the horrors of World War II, but he was definitely there. All in all, time spent as a Nazi? 4 years, 1941 through 1945, when many of the worst atrocities in the history of mankind were committed by his countrymen. You can say that these things shouldn't prevent him from being a spiritual leader. After all, he was an unwilling participant. He didn't do anything evil. However, to paraphrase Edmund Burke, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Ratzinger didn't speak out. He didn't even risk his neck by refusing to join what's basically the equivalent of the Nazi Boy Scouts, and he only deserted the German army once his unit had already been dissolved. Other people in similar situations in Nazi Germany helped those persecuted by the Nazis to survive, to escape, and to hide, and they are true heroes and champions of their beliefs. Ratzinger may have been young, but he did nothing. After the war, he returned to seminary and was ordained in 1951. In 1957, he completed his habilitation, qualifying him to become a professor of theology. He continued to work as a professor and chair in dogmatic theology until being appointed Archbishop of Munich and Freising in 1977. In 1981, Ratzinger was named the prefect of the Sacred Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith, an organization that, while best known for its authority over the teaching of Catholic doctrine, also has authority over other matters, including clerical sexual misconduct. In 2001 specifically, Pope John Paul II gave the CDF a specific charge to investigate sexual abuse of minors by priests. Ratzinger promptly sent a letter to every bishop in the Catholic Church reminding them of the strict penalties associated with revealing details of any allegations, effectively blocking secular authorities from carrying out an investigation, and increased the duration of the secrecy to, in the case of sexual abuse of a minor, 10 years from the day the victim turns 18, for the good of the Church as a whole. In 2002, Ratzinger was quoted as saying that less than 1% of priests are guilty of acts of this type. Given how many churches there are in my town, and given that the church I went to as a child had multiple priests, I'm not sure how comforting this statistic is. The letter in question was also signed by Archbishop Tarcisio Bertoni, who in a 2003 interview said, "In my opinion, the demand that a bishop be obligated to contact the police in order to denounce a priest who has admitted the offense of pedophilia is unfounded." What? To be fair, this mandate doesn't imply that if secular authorities found out about a case, that they couldn't investigate it. They can. It just means that the church will not cooperate with the authorities, even if they have an admission of guilt by the offending man of the cloth. You can't investigate a case you've never heard about, and there's a strong precedent that Ratzinger specifically will cover up crimes against children, no matter what horror has resulted. For example, in 1996, the Cardinal received word that Father Lawrence Murphy of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, may have molested up to 200 young, deaf boys while serving as a priest at St. John's School for the Deaf. It was said that Murphy would take them to his bedroom in the school or visit their beds late at night, molest them, then leave. One victim said, "I felt so confused. Here I had Father Murphy touching me. I would be like, God, what's right?" Others have said that they believed at the time that it must be all right because it was being done by a priest. Wisconsin bishops were set to begin a trial that could lead to Murphy's dismissal, until he wrote a letter to Cardinal Ratzinger protesting that he should not be put on trial because he had repented and was in poor health, saying that he wanted to live out the time he had left in the dignity of his priesthood. Murphy died in 1998, unpunished by church officials. There are other examples as well, such as the case of Reverend Michael Teta of Tucson, Arizona. Ratzinger took over his abuse case as part of his duties at the CDF and did nothing with it for years in spite of repeated pleas from the local bishop to have the man defrocked. Even after secular authorities get involved and the priest is convicted, Ratzinger, through his inaction, has allowed them to continue harming children, such as the 1980 case of Reverend Peter Hullerman, whose transfer to a psychological treatment center to cure him of pedophilia was approved by then Archbishop Ratzinger, and the alleged abuse was not reported to German police until 1986. After serving probation, he was returned to service for the church and continued to work with children. And the example of Reverend Stephen Keesley. In 1978, Keesley pleaded no contest to misdemeanors involving child molestation in Oakland, California. The local bishop, John Cummins, tried for years to get the offender defrocked. In a letter from November 1985 bearing his signature, not to mention a striking resemblance to the 2001 letter I talked about earlier, Cardinal Ratzinger said any decision to defrock this man must take into account the good of the universal church, and the detriment that granting the dispensation can provoke within the community of Christ's faithful, particularly considering the young age. Keesley was ultimately removed from priesthood in 1987, a full 9 years after pleading guilty to child molestation. What assignment did he take while the local diocese was awaiting approval from the good cardinal to remove him? Youth minister at St. Joseph Church, where he had served previously as an associate pastor. Keesley must have felt like a fox in a chicken coop. And of course, he did continue to molest children. In 2004, he pleaded guilty to the 1995 molestation of a young girl in his home and was sentenced to 6 years in prison. So, rather than tackle the situation at hand, turn over all offenders to secular authorities, and very publicly deal with the corruption within the church, Ratzinger buried it, resulting in known child molesters to get reassigned within their area. Some, like Stephen Keesley, as youth ministers. In 2005, Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger became Pope Benedict XVI, and is now the spiritual leader to roughly 1.1 billion Catholics around the world. That same year, more than a half-dozen victims reached a settlement with the Oakland Diocese, alleging that Stephen Keesley molested them as young children. When interviewed in prison by their attorney, Keesley was asked how many children he molested over the years, to which he replied, tons. How many did he molest while his case was on hold for the good of the Universal Church? How many other examples of this behavior are out there? In 2004, the John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York put together a report now simply known as the John Jay Report, studying cases of clerical sexual abuse between 1950 and 2002. During this period, the report determined that in the United States alone, a total of 10,667 individuals had made allegations of clerical sexual abuse. 6,700 accusations against 4,932 priests in the United States were substantiated, meaning approximately 4% of priests covered by the study had substantial allegations that they molested children. Of those priests that were accused, police were contacted regarding only 21%. Another 3,300 of the total allegations remain unsubstantiated because the offending priest was deceased at the time of the allegation. Of course, Ratzinger was not in charge of the CDF until the 1980s, and this study covers a period starting 30 years before that, but a full 2/3 of the reported allegations came between 1993 and 2003. Would the number of allegations resulting in police contact be higher if somebody else were at the helm? How many cases went unreported entirely because of Ratzinger's mandate of pontifical secrecy? It's quite possible we will never know. To be honest, when I first started writing this video, I had a lot of jokes in mind. Like how Pope Benedict looks a hell of a lot like Emperor Palpatine, or how former Cardinal Ratzinger had a brief stint in American television in the 1980s, playing the mailman on Cheers. But this is serious. Hundreds of families across the world have been hurt or outright destroyed by this man's failure to bring evil men to justice. Now, much like with his Nazi past, it can be said that he himself did not do anything evil. Bullshit. I refuse to give this man the benefit of the doubt. In most civilized countries, child molestation is illegal. Helping people to cover up their crimes that they commit is generally also illegal, as is preventing proper authorities from investigating and punishing those responsible for said crimes. In America, we call it harboring a felon and obstruction of justice. And for this, the Pope should be arrested and his papacy revoked. Of course, it has been said that only a bolt of lightning from the heavens can remove a Pope from power. You hear that, big guy? I'm Tim Lyons. Thanks for watching. Goddamn diplomatic immunity.